Marcus said it at 6:15 in the evening, near the drinks table, in the specific tone he used for things he considered observations rather than insults. He was talking to his college friend, a man named Brett, who had been at every Hargrove family reunion for the past 4 years and had never, in that time, said anything I found particularly memorable. They were standing close together in the way of men who are about to say something they'd rather not be overheard, which meant they were speaking at a volume designed to be overheard by exactly the people they wanted to hear it. I was 2 feet behind Marcus. He didn't know this. "Elena," I heard him say. "She's decorative. Good for photos, you know the type. James upgraded his aesthetic when he married her, I'll give him that. But you get her in a real conversation and it's just," he made a gesture I couldn't see but could picture, the hand movement that means nothing there. Brett laughed. The comfortable laugh of a man who has never had to think carefully about what he finds funny. "What does she do?" Brett asked. "She used to be in medicine," Marcus said. "I think. Or something adjacent to medicine. She doesn't really talk about it." "I used to be in medicine. Something adjacent. She doesn't really talk about it." All 3 statements were, in their own way, accurate. I had been in medicine. It was, from the outside, adjacent to medicine in the same way that a combat deployment is adjacent to a camping trip. And I didn't talk about it, not at family reunions, not at dinner parties, not in the casual conversational currency of people who introduce themselves by profession and expect a simple answer. What I had been was not a simple answer. I picked up my glass of water and walked to the other side of the yard. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The Hargrove family reunion was an annual event held at James's parents' property in Virginia, 14 acres, a farmhouse that had been in the family since the 1940s. A barn that was used exclusively for storage and provided excellent acoustics for arguments. The reunion had been running for 31 years, which meant it had developed the specific inertia of a tradition that everyone attended and no one quite remembered choosing to attend. I had been coming for 6 years since James and I married, since I became, by the logic of marriage, a Hargrove by association if not by name. I had learned the property and the people, which cousins got along, which branches of the family had the decade-old argument that everyone knew about and no one discussed, which aunts made the potato salad that was actually worth eating and which made the one that no one touched but everyone complimented. James's family was not unkind to me. They were, in the aggregate, decent people who had built a family culture that was warm and inclusive and occasionally suffocating. They liked James and therefore wanted to like me, and on the whole they succeeded. Marcus was the exception. Marcus was James's older brother by 3 years. He was a commercial real estate developer based in Atlanta, successful in the way that men in that field become successful through a combination of genuine skill, aggressive confidence, and a willingness to treat most problems as transactions. He was smart. He was charming in the specific way of men who have always been the most energetic person in the room and have learned to mistake energy for intelligence. And he had decided, in the years since James and I married, that I was a certain kind of woman, elegant, pleasant, ultimately decorative, and he had never found sufficient reason to revise that assessment. I had not provided him with reasons. That was my choice, made deliberately, over 6 years. My reasons were my own. I had left active service for years before the reunion. 17 years, emergency medicine and trauma surgery, specialized toward conflict zone deployment, the work that happens in the spaces between the clean clinical environment of a hospital and the conditions that make clinical thinking impossible. Field hospitals. Forward surgical teams. The specific improvisation required when the equipment you need isn't present and the patient in front of you can't wait for it to arrive. I had left because my daughter was 8 years old and I had been gone for too much of her life. That was the whole of the reason, not burnout, not injury, not the accumulated weight of things seen. All of those were real, but they were not the reason. The reason was Sophie, 8 years old, who had started marking the days on a calendar when I came home and had never, to my knowledge, done the same when I left. After leaving, I had moved into academic medicine teaching, research, the training of future physicians, and the specific skills I had spent 17 years acquiring in the field. I was, by any objective measure, good at this. The work was important. It was also quieter than what came before, and the quietness suited the particular phase of life I was in. James knew all of this. His parents knew most of it. The broader family knew a version. She was in medicine, she had deployed, She was a doctor. She was now at the university. Marcus had taken the last version and discarded everything before it. She's decorative. I had thought, when I first heard him say it, not that first time, but at other events, in other rooms, other configurations of the same basic dismissal about correcting it. About finding a clean, unambiguous way to make the picture accurate without requiring a full accounting of 17 years of things I did not discuss at family gatherings. Each time I had decided against it. Not because the correction didn't feel warranted, because the correction would have required making it about Marcus's opinion, and I had spent too many years in environments where opinions were irrelevant and outcomes were everything to start restructuring my behavior around what Marcus thought. His opinion was his problem. Mine was Sophie, and James, and the work that was still in front of me. *****. I found James near the barn at 7 o'clock. He was talking to his father about something to do with the property's drainage, which had been a recurring topic for at least 3 reunions. His father was a precise, deliberate man who had spent 40 years as a civil engineer and had never fully left the professional habit of treating every problem as a structural one. I put my hand on James's arm. "Hey," he said. "Hey." I leaned in briefly. "Marcus." His expression shifted, the specific shift of a man who loves his family and has therefore spent decades translating their worst behavior into its least damaging version. "What did he say?" "Something I've heard before," I said. "I'm fine. I just wanted you to know. I'll talk to him." "You don't need to." "Elena, James." I met his eyes. "I mean it. I don't need you to manage him. I'm fine." He looked at me for a moment. He knew me well enough to read the difference between fine that was managing and fine that was actually fine. After 9 years of marriage, he knew most of my versions. "Okay," he said. I kissed his cheek and went back into the yard. The reunion had the specific geography of large family gatherings, clusters by age and interest, the teenagers in one orbit, the parents of young children in another, the older generation at the long tables near the farmhouse where the food stayed warm. The children ran through all of it with the impervious energy of people who have not yet learned to stay in their lane. Sophie was with her cousin. She was 12 now, in the particular phase of 12 where childhood and something else overlap uncomfortably, where she was sometimes a child running in a yard and sometimes a person watching the adults with the careful assessment of someone taking notes for future use. She had her father's socialese and, I had been told, my precision. The combination was going to be something. In 10 years. She caught my eye across the yard and waved. I waved back. At 7:30 the food came out, the serious food, the Hargrove family production, grilled meats, 3 kinds of salad, cornbread from James's mother's recipe that was genuinely the best cornbread I had eaten in my life and which she would not share under any circumstances. There was the brief organized chaos of serving, the finding of seats, the negotiations over who sat where that happen at every family gathering and are somehow both trivial and essential. I sat with James and his parents and his Aunt Patricia, who was my favorite person at these events, a retired schoolteacher who had developed, over 50-some years of teaching other people's children, the specific quality of paying full attention to whoever she was talking to. She asked about my research. She asked about Sophie's school year. She asked 3 questions that were, each one, exactly the right question for what I actually wanted to talk about. Marcus sat across the yard with Brett and 2 of his colleagues who had driven up from Atlanta. The evening moved. It was around 8:40 when I heard the sound. Not dramatic sounds rarely announce themselves as important until you've already started moving toward them. It was a specific quality of commotion from the far end of the yard, near the barn, where some of the children had been playing. A sudden rise in the ambient noise, a tonal shift from the sounds of playing to something else. I was standing 20 feet away. I put down my plate. The specific clarity that comes in these moments, I have tried, over years, to explain it to people who haven't experienced it, and the best I can manage is this: it is not calm exactly, and it is not heightened awareness exactly, it is more like the noise that everything irrelevant simply stops. The conversations around you, the context, the social calculation, all of it goes quiet, and what remains is the situation and the assessment of the situation and the first action. I covered the distance in 7 or 8 seconds. The child on the ground was 8 years old. I would learn his name was Tyler, Marcus's son, one of the children who had been playing near the barn. He was on his back in the grass, And the other children were standing around him in the frozen posture of children who don't know what to do, which is to say they were doing the right thing. I knelt beside him. His breathing was the thing I registered first: audible, effortful, the specific sound of airway compromise. His lips had a faint blue tinge that in the evening light was easy to miss if you didn't know to look for it. I knew to look for it. Tyler. I put 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse present, rapid. Tyler, can you hear me? His eyes were open but not tracking. I ran my hands along his throat. Neck was clear, no obvious trauma. The breathing pattern was wrong for simple obstruction. Wrong in a specific way I recognized. What happened? I said without looking up. I said it loud enough for whoever was nearest. He was running and he grabbed his throat and went down. One of the older children, maybe 11. Reliable witness. He didn't hit anything. Not traumatic. Spontaneous onset. I put my ear close to his airway. The sound was there, the high-pitched partial obstruction of something that wasn't a foreign body and was unpositional. The wheeze on inspiration was the thing that told me what I needed to know. Anaphylaxis. Severe allergic reaction, airway involvement, rapid onset. No visible trigger, which meant food, which meant whatever he'd eaten in the last 20 minutes. Does anyone know his allergies? I said. Still not looking up. Silence. His parents. I looked up now, briefly, at the cluster of people forming behind me. Someone get his parents. Fast. And his Marcus was there. I hadn't heard him come up. He was standing at the edge of the circle, the specific color of a person who has had the ground move under them. I'm his father. Does Tyler have any known allergies? I said. Bees. Marcus's voice had changed entirely, the social voice gone, the real one underneath it. He's allergic to bees. He had a reaction 2 years ago. He stopped. We have a pen. An EpiPen. It's in the car. Get it now, I said. Run. He ran. I had never seen Marcus run. He ran. Who called 911? I said to the group. I'm calling. James's voice, from behind me. Tell them anaphylaxis, pediatric, approximately 8 years old, airway compromise, EpiPen on the way. Tell them we need owls, not bless. Tell them 5 minutes ago. James repeated it into the phone, verbatim, which was one of the 10,000 things I loved about him. Tyler's breathing had worsened in the 30 seconds since I'd knelt down. The window on anaphylaxis with airway involvement is not generous. You have minutes. Sometimes less, Tyler. I kept my voice seat and not calm as a performance, calm as information, because children in distress regulate partly off the adult nearest them, and I needed him to stay with me. I'm a doctor. I'm going to help you breathe. Can you look at me? His eyes found me. Good. Good. Stay right there with me. Your dad's getting your medicine. You're going to be okay. The things you say in these moments are not lies. They are the shape of what you're working toward, stated as intention, which is a different thing. Marcus came back in approximately 90 seconds with the EpiPen. He'd had it in his hand before he cleared the distance, which told me something about Marcus I hadn't known, that somewhere underneath the social performance was a man who could run for his child and arrive ready. He dropped to his knees beside me and held it out. You do it, he said. Please. I took it. Outer thigh, lateral. The cap. The swing and press. The hold. 10 seconds. Tyler's breathing changed. Not immediately, not dramatically. Anaphylaxis doesn't traverse in 10 seconds. But the quality of the struggle shifted. The airways were getting room. Good, I said, to Tyler, to Marcus, to both of them. Good. The medicine is working. Stay still for me. Marcus was on his son's other side, holding Tyler's hand with both of his, and he was making a sound I recognized: quiet, controlled, the sound a parent makes when they are doing the work of not falling apart for their child's sake while falling apart entirely inside. I kept my hand on Tyler's sternum and monitored his breathing. The paramedics arrived in 9 minutes. I gave them the briefing in the standard format: time of onset, symptoms, intervention, response. The lead paramedic was experienced. He absorbed it without the adjustment period that happens when information comes from a civilian, which told me someone had relayed my credentials from the 911 call, or he'd simply recognized the briefing pattern. They stabilized Tyler for transport. Secondary EpiPen, IV access, monitoring. His color was better by the time they loaded him. His breathing was still labored but no longer the sound of someone losing the fight. Marcus rode in the ambulance. Before he got in, he stopped. He turned and looked at me across the distance 20 feet, maybe, and something crossed his face that I had never seen there before. Not the social version of a Hargrove family gathering. Something underneath that. He didn't say anything. He got in the ambulance. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The yard was very quiet for about 3 minutes. Then it wasn't. As these things go, the children were gathered and settled. The adults reclustered. The low-urgent conversations that follow emergencies. James's mother was crying quietly and being held by James's aunt. Sophie had found me at some point during the ambulance arrival and was standing beside me with her hand in mine, which I held without looking down. James was at my side. "You okay?" he said. "Yes," I said. "Tyler's going to be okay." His color came back. I said. "The epinephrine worked. He needs monitoring and a second dose window and hospital evaluation, but he was stable when they loaded him." James exhaled. "You knew," he said. "From the sound of his breathing." "Yes." "How long did that take?" "To know." 8 seconds, I said. "Maybe 10. He was quiet for a moment. 8 seconds, he said. Not repeating it exactly, more like placing it somewhere. I looked at the barn, where the grass was still flattened in the shape of a small boy, where the EpiPen cap was lying where I'd dropped it. "His father got there in 90 seconds, I said. "With the pen. That was what mattered." "You both mattered," James said. "Yes," I agreed. "We both did." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The hospital called at 11:30 that night. Marcus, calling from Tyler's room. Tyler was stable, responding well, would be kept overnight for observation. The physician team had confirmed anaphylaxis, severe. The treating doctor had told Marcus that the field intervention, the rapid identification, the epinephrine timing had likely prevented intubation. Likely prevented. "She needs to know that," Marcus said to James. I was sitting beside him when he called. James was holding the phone between us so I could hear. "She can hear you," James said. A pause. "Elena." His voice was different from everything I'd heard from him in 6 years. Not transformed, people don't transform. But stripped of the social overlay. Just the voice underneath. "Yes," I said. "The doctor here said," he stopped. "He said what you did bought time. That Tyler would have another stop. The stop of a man navigating something he doesn't have the right words for." "He's okay," I said. "Yes. That's the only part that matters. Elena." His voice was steady now, in the way of someone who has made a decision and is enacting it without allowing themselves to reconsider. "I owe you an apology." I was quiet. "Not just tonight. I owe you an apology for 6 years. A pause. "I called you," he stopped. "I said something tonight, before. Near the drinks table. I heard," I said. "I know you did." A beat. "I knew when I said it that you were behind me. I think I said it knowing you were there." "I hadn't known that." "Why?" I said. A long pause. "Because I wanted to see if you'd say something," he said. "And you didn't. And I told myself that meant you didn't care. But now," he stopped. "Now I think it meant something different. It meant I chose not to," I said. "I know," he said. "I know that now." I looked at the wall of the room where James and I were sitting, the house quiet around us. Outside, the reunion had ended hours ago, people dispersed, the farm property returning to itself. "What do you think you owe me an apology for, specifically?" I said. Another pause. He was thinking about it, actually thinking, not performing thought. "For 6 years of having a picture of you that was wrong," he said. "And for choosing to keep it wrong because the right picture was more complicated than I wanted." I held this. "And for tonight," he said. "For saying it at the table, for saying it in earshot. For," he stopped. "For reducing someone to a word when I had never bothered to find out who they actually were." The room was quiet. "Is Tyler asleep?" I said. "Just went down." "Then go be in the room with him," I said. "We can talk another time." "Okay," he said. "Elena." "Marcus." "Thank you." "He's your son," I said. "Go sit with him." He went. James put the phone down. He looked at me. 6 years, he said. 6 years, I agreed. "Why didn't you ever?" "Because correcting Marcus's opinion wasn't the work," I said. It wasn't what I was there for. And it wasn't going to change anything until the moment was right. The moment was never going to be a conversation at a drinks table. What changed it? I looked at him. Tyler, I said. You could have intervened tonight without Marcus ever knowing what you did, he said, if you'd wanted. You could have stayed in the background. I know, I said. You didn't. No. Why? I thought about how to answer. Because a child needed what I knew, I said. The rest of it, what Marcus thinks, what he says, what anyone says, that wasn't in the equation. A child needed what I knew and I had it, and everything else was irrelevant. James was quiet for a long time. You've always been that, he said finally. The person who has what's needed. I've known that for 9 years. I know you have, I said. Marcus didn't. He does now, I said. James put his arm around me. I rested my head against his shoulder. Outside, the Virginia night was doing what it does in August, warm, full of sound, the specific texture of a summer that hasn't decided yet to become autumn. Tyler was in a hospital room in Charlottesville, asleep, with his father in the chair beside him. That was the whole of what mattered. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. I called Tyler's room the next morning. Marcus answered on the second ring. His voice had the quality of someone who had been awake most of the night and had reached the far side of exhaustion into something quieter. How is he? I said. Good, Marcus said. Doctor did rounds at 7. Said he can go home this afternoon. Good. He asked about you, Marcus said. Tyler. He asked about the lady who helped him. I didn't say anything. I told him your name, Marcus said. I told him you were his uncle's wife. He said, a brief pause, the breath of a man containing something. He said to tell you thank you. Tell him he's welcome, I said. Tell him I'm glad he's okay. Elena. Marcus's voice again, the version from the night before. Can I ask you something? Yes, what I mean, what do you actually do? What was your background? I've been at every family event for 6 years and I realized this morning I actually don't know. I looked out the window of the farmhouse where James and I had stayed the night. The property was quiet, the tables from the reunion still set up on the grass, the whole infrastructure of a family gathering in the process of returning to ordinary. I was a trauma surgeon, I said. With specialization in conflict zone medicine. I deployed to 3 theaters over 17 years: Afghanistan, Syria, and South Sudan. I've been in academic medicine for the past 4 years. I teach emergency medicine and I do research on trauma intervention protocols. A silence. Conflict zone, he said. Yes. You were, he stopped. You were a military surgeon. And civilian, in South Sudan. Different contexts. Another silence. Longer. 6 years, he said again. Not like an accusation, like a fact he was examining from multiple angles. You never asked, I said. Not unkindly. I know. A pause. Why didn't you? Because the work I did required me to not need people to know about it, I said. You do that kind of work for long enough, the habit stays. You don't offer things to rooms that haven't asked. You wait for the right question. I never asked the right question. No, I said. You didn't. He was quiet. I want to, he said. Ask the right questions. If you're willing. I thought about 6 years of reunions. 6 years of drinks tables and half-heard comments and the long patience of choosing not to engage. Come to lunch, I said. When Tyler is home and well. Bring him if he's up for it. We'll talk. Okay, he said. Marcus. Yes. The 90 seconds, I said, getting the EpiPen. That was good. That was the right thing and you did it fast. A pause. I wasn't fast enough, he said. You'd already done the hard part. You did your part, I said. That's all any of us can do. He was quiet for a long moment. Lunch, he said. Yes. Thank you. We said goodbye. Sophie found me on the porch an hour later. She had the expression she sometimes had, the one that meant she had been thinking about something and had arrived at the point where she needed to say it out loud to find out if it held. She sat down on the chair next to mine. I watched last night, she said. I know, I said. You were right not to come too close. The space around someone in that situation needs to stay clear. I know, she said. You taught me that. She was quiet for a moment. Is that what you did? She said. When you were deployed. That kind of thing. I thought about how to answer. The conditions were usually worse, I said. The equipment was usually less. But the basic shape of it, yes. Recognizing quickly what was wrong, doing what could be done with what was available, keeping the person present with you while you worked. She thought about this. You're good at it, she said. I've had a lot of practice, I said. No, she said, with the directness of 12-year-olds who are still young enough to say what they actually mean. I mean, you're good at it. Like it's yours. It's the thing you were built for. I looked at her. Yes, I said. I think that's right. She nodded. Satisfied. Uncle Marcus didn't know, she said. No. Was that frustrating? That he didn't know and he said things. I thought about this carefully, because she deserved the real answer. No, I said. Not frustrating. It would have been frustrating if I needed him to know. But I didn't. I knew. That was enough. She considered this. That's a hard thing to actually believe, she said. Most people say that but they don't mean it. I know, I said. I had to learn it. It took years. How do you learn it? I looked at the yard, at the tables from the reunion, at the barn where the grass was still flattened. You do the work, I said. Over and over. In situations where no one sees you do it. And then in situations where people see you and don't understand what they're seeing. And then in situations where they do understand. And somewhere in all of that, you stop needing the understanding. The work is the point. Not the recognition. She was quiet. Tyler was the point, she said. Tyler was the point, I agreed. She put her head on my shoulder briefly, the gesture of a 12-year-old who is past the age of easy physical affection and deploys it with precision, which meant it was always the real thing. Then she stood up. I'm going to go help pack up the tables, she said. Good, I said. She went down the porch steps and into the yard. I sat with my coffee and watched the August morning arrange itself over the Hargrove farm, the light coming sideways through the oaks, the long shadows contracting as the sun climbed, the ordinary beauty of a day that doesn't know it comes after something. 3 weeks later, Marcus and Tyler came to lunch. Tyler was fine, fully recovered. The clean resilience of an 8-year-old who has processed something significant and moved past it with the efficiency of someone who has not yet learned that adults are supposed to carry these things longer. He had, his father told me before they arrived, asked approximately 4 to 7 questions about what anaphylaxis was and how epinephrine worked and what would have happened without it. He had watched 2 educational videos on YouTube. He was, Marcus said with the specific mixture of relief and amazement that parents have when their children metabolize something hard into curiosity, completely fine. He spent the first 20 minutes at lunch explaining to me what he had learned about epinephrine. Most of it was correct. I told him so, and told him the parts that were slightly off, and he absorbed the corrections with the encephalosenses of a child who has not yet learned that being wrong is supposed to feel like failure. Did you ever use one before? He asked. An EpiPen. I've used what they're based on, I said, in field situations. The same medication, different delivery method. Field situations like in places where hospitals weren't nearby, I said. He considered this. Was it scary? He said. Sometimes, I said. The important thing isn't whether it's scary. The important thing is doing the thing that needs doing whether it's scary or not. He thought about this with the full weight of an 8-year-old who takes information seriously. Okay, he said. And went back to his lunch. Marcus and I talked for 2 hours after Tyler went to play in the yard with Sophie. He asked the right questions. Not all of them. There are years of questions behind a 17-year career, and we were having our first real conversation, which meant we were at the beginning of a territory neither of us had previously entered. But he asked honestly, and he listened to the answers. And several times he said something that indicated he was actually hearing what I was saying rather than waiting to speak. I told him about the work. Not the version compressed for family gatherings, the real version, or as much of the real version as belonged in an afternoon in a kitchen. I told him about South Sudan, which was the deployment that had most changed what I understood medicine to be, the stripping away of resources and infrastructure down to what was actually essential. The discovery that what was essential was less than I thought and more fundamental than anything I'd learned in a hospital. I told him about the cases that had gone wrong, because the cases that go wrong are part of the work and leaving them out would have been dishonest. He listened to all of it. At the end, he said, I don't know how you do it, How you carry all of that and then sit at a family barbecue and let me say what I said. I thought about this. Because the carrying is not the hard part, I said. The hard part was the doing. The carrying is just afterward. It's what you do with your hands once the work is done. He was quiet for a moment. And me, he said. The things I said, is that something you carry? I looked at him. No, I said. I filed it. Accurately. Under, he doesn't know, and the moment hasn't come yet. And now it has. And now it has, I agreed. He nodded slowly. Elena, he said. For what it's worth, and I know it's 6 years late, you are the opposite to decorative. I looked at him for a moment. I know, I said. He almost smiled. Not the social smile. I know you know, he said. That's the whole thing, isn't it? You already knew. Yes, I said. I've known for a long time. Did it ever bother you that I didn't? I thought about the honest answer. It bothered me less than you'd expect, I said. Because your knowing was never what I was working for. He was quiet. What were you working for? He said. I thought about Tyler in the yard, 8 years old, explaining epinephrine. Sophie at 12, head on my shoulder, saying it's the thing you were built for. The work, I said. Just the work. The rest of it takes care of itself, eventually. He nodded. And I had believed it for years in the way you believe things that have been tested by time and circumstance and found to be true. The work takes care of itself. You do it well, in the places it needs doing, with the focus it deserves, without requiring an audience. And then one odd this evening at a family reunion, a small boy's breathing changes and everything you built, quietly, over 17 years, rides exactly when it's needed. Not for recognition. Not for Marcus. For Tyler. Just Tyler. Which had always been the only reason that ever mattered.